everybody. Okay, off. I don't know if something's wrong with my internet. Hang on. Pause. Is everyone coming back? Oh my gosh. Technology. Technology. Lydia, your block looks amazing. Anybody there? Guys, I don't know what happened. It just like died. It just died. Are you here? Are you here? Come back to me. And we're back. Okay, that's right. All right, I'm gonna hang tight for just a second and let everybody jump on. I don't know what just happened, guys. I looked up and my phone just like closed Facebook. So I have no answers for that. I'm just gonna give everybody a minute to jump back with me. Guys, I'm so sorry. We'll kind of start at the top here in just a minute after everybody jumps on. If you're just now tuning in and you're brand new around here, my name is HollyAnne Knight. Welcome to String and Story. It's my job to guide you to quilt with confidence. I'm thrilled you're here. I'm sorry about the technology issues. Do please, as you're hopping back on, hit like and share again to push this back out to all of our friends. Answer that question at the top. Guys, I don't even know. I don't even know. All right, I'm gonna put this back over in Quilting Rockstars and just say, take two. I don't know, y'all. Technology. Okay, where were we? We were talking about contrast. So we're about to do a big series on color and choosing fabrics for your quilts. And I'm thrilled about it because it's one of my favorite things, but it's something that I'm discovering that more and more people have anxiety about, and I don't want you to have anxiety about this. I want you to choose fabrics with confidence the same way that we quilt with confidence around here, right? So we have three main types of contrast that I talked about in this week's blog post. They are value, color, and scale. Let me break that down for you. Value, how light or dark a color is. So for example, light blue, dark blue, this has a darker value than this color here, right? Color contrast, if you take yourself back with me to elementary art for a second, then you'll remember on your color wheel you had your primary colors, everybody holler them out with me, red, blue, and yellow, and then you have your complementary colors to that, which are your secondary colors. So red and green, blue and orange, yellow and purple, okay? And if you're doing the quick mental math on that, green is the complement of red because green is made by mixing blue and yellow, the two primary colors that are not red. And that same principle applies for the rest, okay? So quick example over here, I've got aqua and orange, so blue and orange as complementary colors. So value contrast, light and dark, color contrast, how different colors play together. And then finally the contrast of scale, which I'm trying to look if I have a great example over here. So can y'all see way down here? Not super well. This is a very subtle tone-on-tone Allison Glass gray versus this very big and bold seahorse, which yes, these seahorses are upside down. Did I think about that overly much before I pieced it that way? No, but you know what? We're gonna call it seahorses in space and move along with it. Directional prints, I just let them fall where they may, right? Okay, so value, light and dark, color, where things are on the color wheel and how they play together. The most common way that I do this is with things like complementary colors, like blue and orange, or warm and cool colors. Your warm colors are things like red, yellow, and orange, and your cool colors are blue, green, and purple. There can be a little bit of bleed over between those things. For example, some purples can be very warm. Some blues can even be very warm. Some oranges can get pretty cool depending on how much blue is in them. Not fixed on String and Story yet, Tina. Uh-oh, what's that mean? Okay, I'm interrupting myself to see. It looks like we're still having some technical difficulties. Solids is complements. Prefer to work with patterns or tone on tone. Okay, y'all are filtering back on with me. Thank you so much, by the way, for not only putting up with a change of day, but also then issues with technology. I have no clue what happened. All right, so those are three main types of contrast. I have over here just off camera lots and lots of quilts. I'm going to just talk you through the different kinds of things that I've done with them, and I am going to end with the hang on, let me count my years backwards. It must have been the 2016 Bonnie Hunter Mystery, which was the first, last, and only one I have thus far completed, which is on Provence. And I will talk you through a little bit of how I made my decisions for that quilt. I know that's something y'all are really curious about because it's mystery season. The colors are coming. We're all so excited. So we'll end there. Okay. Love mixing all. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Yay. Okay. I'm a print person too, guys, if you haven't figured that out. Let's start with light and dark, or value. And I have one very clear example that I'm going to use. This is the most obvious example of light and dark in a quilt that I can give you. This is my pattern Perfect Fit. I will let you know which of these patterns are mine, and if they are my pattern, you can get them at stringandstory.com/shop, okay? This is Perfect Fit. This is a grayscale quilt, so what that means is it's made of black, white, and grays. And this is a very obvious quilt with lots and lots of contrast, because we obviously have our very darkest dark and our very lightest light and one color in the middle. So I show this quilt to you first to explain value, because one of the things that when people talk about contrast in quilts, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the blog post for this week, the primary thing that people talk about is, well, if you want to make sure that you have good contrast in your quilts, well, then you just need to take a black and white picture of your fabric and make sure that you have a clear dark dark and a clear light light and some stuff in the middle. This is technically true. This is a wonderful tool. However, it's a limited tool, okay? And I shared an example on the blog. You'll notice I don't have stacks of fabric here with me today. That's because I want to show you guys more quilts today, but you can see pictures of specific fabric pull examples of all of this on the blog. So I showed you a picture of 3 identical prints. It was a Rifle Paper Company print. Color photo and a black and white photo. And they had decent contrast. Same exact print. There was kind of a light, medium, dark effect going on with them. The problem with that, though, is because they're the exact same print, or even if they had been slightly different prints, but the same scale, so all that kind of like medium to small flower print, when you put those all in a quilt next to each other, so if I did this quilt with those 3 prints, it would be very hard to see the pattern of this quilt, right? So using the black and white feature on your phone is a limited tool. It's an important tool. I recommend using it. That's why today's lesson and today's blog post are important, because I want you to go beyond that, okay? There's more to that. So here we go. Value, very important. Another great example of value that I've done recently is I used a lot of value for my Moda Bake Shop quilt, which I'm only going to partially unfold this monster for you guys. This is a really big quilt. So what's going on here with value is I have my light. Again, I've gone for a white. My dark is navy. You can see I've used a lot of different navy. Well, y'all may not be able to see. Up close you guys can see I used several different navies. And then the red, blue, and yellow in here are medium tones, right? They all fall in that mid-range. And so that gives me a spectrum of value on this quilt that creates great contrast, okay? I'm going to circle back to this quilt in a minute when I talk about color. Oh, thanks, Lydia. I cannot wait to get this thing quilted and get it on my guest bed because oh, I love it too. I love it too. Okay, I'll talk about value a little bit more as I jump into some of these other quilts, but let me move on. I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing these in the same order as the blog, but I can't hold it in my brain. So color, perfect. Let me hold this guy back up. Here's where color matters with this. I mentioned color contrast over here with blue and orange. There's also, and if you take the Intro to Color Theory class, you'll learn about this. There's a triad of ways to do color. And I mentioned 2 triads earlier: primary colors, red, blue, and yellow; secondary colors, orange, green, purple. So this, for my midtones, I used a triad of yellow, blue, red, primary colors. They also happen to be my midtones, not my lights or my darks, but what that means is that even though all 3 of these colors have very similar value, if you were to take a black and white picture of this block, those would all look roughly the same, right? And your brain, because we love to talk about black and white photos and value contrast, your brain goes, oh, well then you can't do that in your quilt. But I can do that, and here's why. I have another dark and another light in this quilt, so I have checked the value box. The way that I'm choosing to create colors or contrast amongst my colors is by choosing what colors they are. So these create a different type of contrast to your eyeballs that putting the three of them together makes them pop, even though they don't have that same value contrast. Does that make sense? A little bit? At any point during this, by the way, interrupt me with questions. I'm totally down with that. I'm going to fire hose information at you this week. This is kind of an overview, and we'll keep kind of diving in as we go along, right? Okay, so here I've used color contrast and value contrast, and I could talk about scale too, but primarily value and color contrast on this quilt to make this work. All right, another quilt that hinged heavily, where is it? I have so many quilts over here, guys, that I can't find them all. Here we go. Another quilt that I made recently that hinged heavily on color contrast is my Dogwood Blossoms quilt. Okay. This one, if you look at it up close, you'll see is made up of a lot of little prints. This one's a little bit bigger, but most of these are pretty small scale prints. This is Cory Yoder's Prairie fabric line from Moda. I don't often work with a single fabric line, but sometimes I do. And this time I did, and the way that I created this contrast was warm and cool colors. So you'll notice that every flower is a warm color, a yellow or a red, and every background is a cool color, a blue or a green, right? And that allows this block design to show up even though the lack of scale difference or the lack of value contrast would normally be a bit of an issue. So this is an interesting quilt because here I only did one type of contrast. I did color contrast, okay? There's very little scale contrast, very little value contrast. This is a gentle effect. Y'all know my quilts. I tend to punch people in the face with my quilts, right? I just like that color and everything to just kind of come right out. So this is a little bit outside of what I normally do, but it's important because maybe you don't like your quilts to punch you in the face. So a way that you can still have effective contrast with your quilts without overwhelming anybody is by using color contrast with similar value tones and sometimes even similar scales. Another color contrast that I did well, actually this was a while ago now. Here's it. This is Let the Light In. Y'all have seen this one a few times, but there's a couple of things going on here that I want to show you guys. This quilt hinges on color contrast, and it's primarily the play between blue and orange and yellow and purple. There's not a lot of green and red in this. You get a little bit with some of these purpley reds and some of these reds, and these kind of teal colors. But this, again, this is a quilt. I've got a little bit of change of scale with a few prints, but I'm primarily hinging on complementary colors to create the visual effect here. I'm not primarily hinging on lights and darks, right? These are all quite saturated. There's a little bit, these get a little darker. The yellows get a little lighter, right? You love it when I bring this out later. This one is a fun one because it looks like, it looks like my scrap stash exploded onto a quilt, and that's pretty much what happened. All right, let's see. Yes, I did let the purple play, Lori. This was based on a slide background that looked like stained glass, and I sketched it out during a church service and turned it into a quilt. And a big part, okay, sidebar backstory, this was one of my very first quilts. Like in the first 3 that I made. And I made this quilt for 2 reasons. One, I wanted to force myself to play with the nice fabric. I had spent some money buying another quilter's scraps. All of these are actually somebody else's scraps. I bought somebody else's scraps, but I really loved them. And I left them on the shelf and I pet them a lot, but I didn't like to play with them. And I still had some cheaper fabric that I was working with, and I had a lot of trouble using the nice fabric. So I made myself use the nice fabric. I also did this with improv piecing because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do that, right? And kind of get a painted effect with my quilting. So again, color contrast, little bit of scale contrast, not a lot of value contrast. Trying to think what other buckets I want to put these guys in. I think I'm going to talk more about scale. All right, the things that are left here, we're going to, one other thing I wanted to talk about. I almost forgot, and this is why I have these back here. I want to talk about these Aldebran placemats, partially because I just wanted to show them off, but also because I wanted to show you two different effects that I created here. So here, all right, this one is complementary colors, right? Red and green, very little value contrast. But you get that pop effect because the green on the red just kind of punches you in the face, right? Color contrast. Here, I went for a slightly different effect. Greens and blues are very near each other on the color wheel, and that's a whole nother way that you can play with color is by choosing colors that are right next to each other on the color wheel. But here it's a value contrast thing. This is a dark and this is a light, right? So you can see how both of these, you can clearly see what's going on. I'm trying to get them kind of evenly lit and it's not working. But both of them you can clearly see the shape that I have made, but for different reasons, okay? So value contrast, color contrast. All right, no scale change here because they're both solids. I work with solids once in a while, not very often. Now finally, let's bring it together and talk about scale. This is the quilt that I have that most obviously contrasts scale. It's still not quilted, guys, sorry. I know you've seen this one a bunch and I still haven't finished quilting it. This is another Dogwood Blossoms quilt. This one is made with Tamara Kate's Joy line. Can you tell that I like to make this quilt with like single lines of fabric? I don't do that super often, but I do with these apparently. But this is the ultimate scale contrast because I put a bunch of really huge prints against a solid background. I'm trying to hold this up so y'all can see some of these really huge prints. I mean, they're huge, right? Huge prints on a solid background. For those of you that who are mentioning that you're scared to use big prints and you want to know how to do it, Lydia, you're obsessed with this line just like I am. It's so great. Yay, Amy. Yeah, we had to move to Friday because the kids are sick. Well, sort of sick. Okay. For those of you who weren't here during part one or missed that part of part one, Ian has a sinus infection. Jim seems to just have allergies. So who knows? Ultimate scale contrast. If you're looking for a good way to use large prints, picking a quilt pattern that uses a minimal number of fabric choices. So at its heart, and we'll talk about this more next week, Dogwood Blossoms is a 2-color quilt. I know, astonishing, because neither of the examples I've shown you have been strictly 2 colors, but at its heart, this is a 2-color quilt. So using a solid background with your loud prints is a great way to use up those loud prints. They can be difficult to play with, especially because, for example, this loud print, these lovely moths, right? This is primarily blues and greens. So if I chop this up real small and I'm using it as blues and greens, it's gonna work, right? It works just fine because no matter where I cut it, it's gonna be primarily blues and greens, and you can kind of work that in with what you're doing. Yay, Carolyn, yeah, we had some technological issues this morning. This print, however, another big loud print, some places that I cut it, it's going to be yellow, but some places I cut it, it's going to be pink, and other places that I cut it, it's going to be gray. And it's like, what? And that's what makes big prints difficult. But if you choose a 2-color quilt, or if you choose maybe even a 3-color quilt, and you minimize what's going on with some of the other fabrics, using something like a solid as your background, it's a great way to work those in. Another way that you can deal with large prints, because remember, scale is small prints, large prints. Solids is kind of like off the charts one direction. I don't think there's an off the charts at the large print end, but you get my feel. I can think of a few designers who are like always way over here in the large print category. But another wonderful way to use those is to use them big. Use them for large piecing. This is one y'all are familiar with. Yet another, look at this. There are 4 different Aldebarans in here. Well, does this count as the same one? This might count as the same one. But Aldebran, large scale piecing, I can get away with some really big prints. Because notice, look at this up close. This is an art gallery print from April Rhodes, black or navy and white. If I chopped that up real small, like Bonnie sized, I might get a lot of white. And that might cause an issue. However, oh, Denise, your login issues is the new Facebook security update that's making me crazy. So it's not just you, babe, I'm sorry. But if I'm way back here, that pattern reads navy. But the reason it does that is because it's so big and it keeps the navy nice and prominent, right? Same thing here with this Allison glass print. It's got this pink in it. If you cut that up into like 1-inch squares, you might end up with a pink square, and that would be a problem. But way back here, it's very obviously navy, okay? Let me just pick some that are smaller. So here's more, okay. I just have to keep giving you guys these examples. Again, green and white and aqua. Scoot way back, clearly navy, okay? So when you're dealing with large scale prints, you can think about them in the context of large piecing. You can also think about setting them against solids or something that's really obviously one color, because this is a print. It's a smaller print. It's a tone on tone. I bring back, and it looks really solid, right? Am I making sense? Interrupt me with questions as I go along, if you have them. Another quilt that y'all will recognize, which, guys, it's quilted, but it's not bound. Susan, that's the Aldebran quilt pattern, which I think there's a link directly to it in the caption of this video. Let me make sure for you. Yes, there's a link directly to it in the caption of this video. Guys, I'm glad you love the quilting. Thank you. Let me make sure that... Lydia, I just grabbed everything that's in my house, which maybe... I don't know. Maybe that just means I hang on to the stuff that you love. Here's another one you love, Lydia. It's quilted but not bound, guys. The latest version of Lanterns of Hope. Dun, da, da, da. This is another quilt pattern that uses a lot of large piecing, and you can see that I've done a lot of different things here. I have everything from solids in this orange to this Allison glass print that is very tight and small. What else do I have in here that's a smaller print? This is a smaller print, but it's clearly a print. And again, you know, this one I could probably cut down. I could probably cut that one as small as maybe 2 inches and still be able to tell pretty well what it is. But then some of these, when you get down to the bottom, so this is a setting corner of royal and navy triangles. And that would never, ever, ever read as navy. And this would have some issues reading as royal because of all that white if this were in a different quilt. But because I've put it, I'm trying to show this to you guys like in context, but this is the downside of a digital trunk show, y'all. Because I have put it with all this other stuff, and it's cut out so big, you can tell what it's supposed to be, okay? All right, I'm just gonna try to hold this up for a little bit more effect for you guys. There we go. Now, on the back of this, I'm gonna show you a print that, all right, here's the back. Partially, I just wanna show you guys the back. This is another one that the design itself is small, right? You see that? The design itself is small. But this would be one that would give you a mite of trouble if it's cut down small, largely because of these pink flowers. However, if it was cut, again, you could probably get down to about 2 inches on it, and you could use it as a gray. So a huge, it's so scrappy, Lydia. It is so freaking scrappy. It's so much fun. So if you have, do I have a ruler handy? I don't think I do. But one of the things you guys can do is you can take, this is if you're dealing with prints especially, this is what this scale section is mostly about, is how the heck do I use prints? You can take one of your clear rulers and take some, what do you call that stuff? Washi tape. And you could block off like a 2-inch square or a 1-inch square, whatever size you need that you're gonna, you know, if you're like, can I use this print in this quilt and have it turn out to be the color that I need it to? You know, block off a square on your ruler and just slide it around on the fabric and see what that window catches. And see if at any point that ruler catches a window that is not primarily the color that you want. Now, if that only happens once or twice, you may still be able to use that fabric as, you know, like for example, this guy. You know, if I did that exercise on here, wanting to use this as a gray, I may still be able to use it primarily as a gray, but I may have to be willing to toss out a couple of squares. And so I may have to be willing to look at it and go, okay, that square is too pink. You know, when I cut it that time, it got all those pink flowers. And I need to just go put that in my scrap user system as a pink square and not use it for this quilt. It might be that the way you happen to cut it, it all falls fine and it's primarily gray. But use that visual window to get an idea of what your fabric's going to chop down to if you're unsure about using prints. Yay, Teresa, glad you're here. Here's some more large scale prints. This is another minimal color palette. This is Natalia Bonner's pattern. This is not my pattern. I don't know how much of it you guys can see. Can y'all see that? It's like really big half square triangles. It's called Dart. This is the quilt that I'm ever so slowly working on for our house. And here's what's going on here. First of all, it's a minimal color palette. I have a light, a dark, and 2 colors, which are kind of a pink, red, and a blue. And these have huge prints. Look how huge these prints are. I mean, they are absolutely enormous. These flowers, huge. All of this, right? These are all very big prints. But again, I'm saved by value contrast. So all of my colors are landing up against a very light or a very dark triangle. And big piecing. Here's another, and I gotta show you guys this because that was, I mean, look how tall this Alice is, right? Like, she's huge. But the big piecing saves the print and the overall effect of the quilt, okay? What you saying, Lydia? It's Wonderland by Rifle Paper Company for Cotton and Steel. Yes, I know exactly what line it is. The reason I know that is because we're doing our whole bedroom Alice in Wonderland because it's my husband's favorite book. And when I saw this, I was like, yay, Alice in Wonderland made classy, finally. Okay. Other tips with dealing with prints. I like to mix up the scale of print as much as I mix up something like the value or the types of colors that are in my quilts, right? I think it's a lot of fun to chop up prints and bring them down small. If it's a line like the Wonderland line where I really want to preserve the look of the fabric itself, I choose something that has larger piecing, right? If I'm not as attached to the print itself and it has enough of the color in it, I might chop it up real small just for the movement of the print. And you know what? I'll give you guys an example. I don't know if I'll have the heart to do it with this exact fabric that I'm going to show you guys. Put this behind my back. I don't know if I'll have the heart to do it with this exact fabric that I'm going to show you guys, but it would work well for it. So I'm going to show you, okay? First of all, look, I folded up my Zuma. Yay! This is, I'm going to try to just pull a corner out because I don't want to have to rebundle this whole thing. This, if you're familiar with the Zuma line, it's actually fun that I can only show you guys a corner. That particular fabric has huge seahorses and whales and seashells on it. But it would also lend itself really well, as you can see from this little corner, to being cut up very small as just an aqua fabric, right? So, and that's, it's kind of a medium scale print, I would say. So think through things like that of like, if I'm not overly attached to the fabric itself, I like the color, I like the print, but I want to do something kind of unexpected, cut up some of those medium-sized prints that have a rich tone-on-tone texture to them because they add a lot of movement to your quilt. And I'm going to find a great example. I did this a lot with my En Provence, and I'm going to use this as my transition as soon as I find it. I use a lot of Allison Goss in this. You'll get the idea when I hold it up. Here we go. Okay, so this is my En Provence, and this was a quilt that I did a lot of that I disregarded the print of the fabric entirely, with the exception of one fabric that I chose for the print, but I also chose it knowing I would chop it up. Let me find a good example. And that was this fabric right here. Can y'all see that? The black and white faces with the red lips, right? Okay, and I used that as one of my neutrals. But even that, I did not fussy cut it. There's a couple of places on the quilt it looks like I fussy cut it. I didn't fussy cut it. And this, fussy cutting's so trendy right now. Fussy cutting is so cool. Don't get me wrong on that. I love fussy cutting. I was gonna point to it, but I forgot that I hid it because you're not supposed to see it yet. I'm working on a quilt right now that I'm doing some fussy cutting, but there's something to be said, especially for something like a Bonnie Hunter Mystery, for only looking at fabrics for their color, okay? Because you get a really cool effect. I'm really proud of this quilt, guys, I'm not gonna lie. But when you get up close on it, you get to play hide and seek. And if you look really closely right now, you'll see sheep and mustaches and elephants and hedgehogs and faces. What else do I see? You guys see what I mean? There's flowers over here. And it becomes its own little scrappy I Spy quilt, okay? So, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. We love our fabrics. We love our fabric designers. Oh, I just realized the way I was holding that, y'all did not have the best light. Hang on. Let me move that so that y'all can get some better light. There you go. Now you can see the colors a little better. We love our fabrics. We love our fabric designers. We love showing off the pretty fabrics. But one of the ways that I found to get over my fear of how prints were going to play together was to do this exercise. And that is to make a very traditional quilt with small piecing where I look only at the fabric for its color. And I disregard what else is going on with it. Okay? And it creates a really fun quilt. So, if you're emotionally attached to the print of your fabric, you can use large piecing and show it off with something like what I did with my Wonderland quilt or the Aldebran quilt or even the Lanterns of Hope quilt. If you want to practice looking at fabric only for its color and its value, how light and dark it is, then using traditional quilt patterns that have smaller piecing and forcing yourself to only look at that fabric for its color and its value can be a super fun exercise, right? And the only caution I have with a traditional quilt is what I mentioned earlier, where you can tape off part of your ruler and make sure that no section of your fabric is going to turn a different color. Then you want, look at this. If I do this with my hand, you can see what I mean, right? So picture this, my hand's the ruler right now, and this is the fabric behind me. See how it changes colors inside my fingers as I move? That's exactly what you need to do on your fabric. Because if you've got a print that there's a lot of white going on, but you're going to cut a section and it's going to be stripy, then it's not going to work, okay? And it may just mean you need to disregard that square if the rest of it's all white. Does that visual help? Maybe? Okay. Teresa, you should totally do it. We're gonna do it together on Friday nights. Sidebar. All right, there's my huge rundown of different types of contrast. We've talked about value, light and dark. We have talked about color, warm and cool, complementary colors. There's more to it than that. Again, see my Intro to Color Theory class, which I added a link for this part 2 of the video in the caption. 3, scale of your print. Teresa, that's right, I will twist your arm in the most loving and encouraging, and I want you to join the party way. So thinking through how big or small your prints are and how that's going to chop down. So for that, you're thinking not only of the scale of your print, but also the scale of your piecing, right? And those two things have to go together. Any questions on that? While y'all are typing in questions, if you already answered the question of the week on the last video, go ahead and answer it again here too, because this will be the video that I pin at the top of my page and the video that I select our winner from. So do go ahead and re-answer that question of the week. All right, I'm just pausing. I have fire hosed at you guys for 45 minutes. Color and fabric is a big topic. That's why we're spending 6 weeks on it. This was the big, broad funnel overview, and we're going to get more specific as the weeks go on. However, do want to make sure you guys know I'm not going to be specifically teaching color theory again. It'll come up in our conversations, but my in-depth teaching on color theory is my Intro to Color Theory class. So if you're going, wait, what are the complementary colors? How do I know what colors create more contrast with each other? That class is where you should go, stringandstory.com/classes. What we're going to be doing over the coming weeks is talking about different types of quilts, especially things like 2-color quilts, 3-color quilts, and we're going to go through, depending on how many fabrics your quilt calls for, how might you break that down to include value, color, and print contrast within the quilt itself, right? Use all sorts of fabrics. You like using prints. Di, I get my energy from you guys because you're wonderful and I love spending time with you. So I get really excited and energized to come hang out. Yay, Teresa, that's so exciting. Yeah, so that's literally exactly what I'm gonna do. So if your quilt pattern calls for 5 different fabrics, how are we gonna break that down? And what are some different ways that we can do it? Are there times when, like with, wherever I threw that quilt, like with this, where we can throw out 2 of the 3 types of contrast and just go with 1 for the sake of simplicity or for the sake of a certain effect, right? Are there times when we want to make sure that we're using all the different types of contrast because it's fun and it looks really cool, right? Hey Sue, prints, but you are surprised how solids, yep, solids can definitely add a pop. Would you pull, hold on, that's a great question. Pull fabric for Bonnie's next quilt and let us know. Yes, PK, is that what I should call you? I will be doing a live video inside the Quilting Rockstars Facebook group after Bonnie publishes the official colors. And we're gonna go through, so here's the deal. Okay, we'll sideline because I know a lot of you guys are gonna do this with me. Bonnie's Winter Mystery officially starts, I think, Black Friday, but she'll publish the colors on Halloween. We will do a live video inside the Quilting Rockstars Facebook group talking about my fabric choices. And spoiler, I'm probably going to change the colors because I love changing the colors and because it's fun to talk about how I changed the colors. So we will do a video on that inside the Quilting Rockstars Facebook group. Then when the quilt along starts, we're going to make the quilt together. What that means. You'll go to Bonnie's website to get the clue each week. I'm not going to give you sizes. I'm not going to give you quantities. I'm not going to give you instructions, okay? But I will be there to keep you company. I will be there to offer encouragement. If you get stuck on something, I will be there to help you, okay? So I'll just kind of be coaching you is what that's going to be. And if you have questions about color or things like that, I'm here to help. So we're going to just kind of funnel through that together from Thanksgiving to New Year's. I'm so excited. In between now and Halloween, and I don't have a specific date on this yet, Bonnie and I are going to do a live on color together. Ah, I'm so excited. It's going to be so much fun. So that will be a great place to ask some questions as well. I don't know how many specifics Bonnie's going to give us about the upcoming mystery during that live. That'll be her prerogative, but it's a good place to ask questions. So hopefully that helps. All right, let's see. Oh, I saw an angry emoji. I'm sorry, whoever I made mad. Mostly prints. Most of your stash of prints, but you love yes, Trudy, I love Alison Glass type prints as well, or type prints as well, and I like to make a lot of my prints kind of like that. However, I'm getting crazier. The longer I quilt, the crazier I get. You like both prints and solids. I like that too. Printed fabric kind of girl. All fabric is awesome. I'm so with you. Seldom use solids. Yes, Kelly, I love that challenge as well. Taking some art class, so you're okay with color, but you want to know how to, yes, Teresa, I'm with you. It's very important. For prints and tone on tone. I'm just making sure I have not missed any questions. Any more questions, guys? Lots of, I love that y'all love prints. That makes me so happy. Prints are great. I'm pro print. All right. Y'all, thank you for hanging with me today. Thank you for being flexible on the day. Sorry about the technological issues. I don't know what the deal with that was. For those of you who want to go ahead and start thinking about colors and quilt bow mysteries. Ooh, I'm going to cough. Hang on. If you read down to the bottom of this week's blog post, it says other resources. There's a video similar to this one a little bit. It was another trunk show that I did with a slightly different twist over the summer called How to Make Any Pattern Scrappy. And so I go through some of these same quilts and talk about them from that angle. There's also a link to how I chose my colors for En Provence. Because if you're familiar with En Provence, you know that those are not the colors that Bonnie used. And I changed mine up. And I have a whole blog post talking about that in depth. I also talk about it in depth inside the Intro to Color Theory class. With a worksheet. I don't think the worksheet's on the blog. You know what? I'll click over there and know the answer to that for you guys now before I say this out loud. I think I talked through the process on the blog, but there's actually a worksheet for how I changed the colors inside the Intro to Color Theory class. I'm looking to make sure. Yes, the workshop is, or the worksheet is inside the class. So the Intro to Color Theory class is also an important resource if you're not super familiar with how the color wheel works. And how all those colors play together, and how to make sure that you're choosing colors that not just like look okay, but that create interesting visual effect, right? All right, thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed today's presentation and you're excited about this upcoming series, please hit like and share on this video. Share this to your page, to your favorite quilting page, to your guild's page, wherever you hang out with your quilty friends here on Facebook. The more the merrier. If you are not already a member of the Quilting Rockstars Facebook group, I would love to have you come join us. We are making this quilt together right now. This is the Aldebran quilt pattern, my new quilt pattern that just came out a couple of weeks ago. And we just got started. This is 1 week's worth because I'm making a twin size quilt, but these blocks come together super quick. It's a fun skill building pattern. You'll be in great company because lots of people are quilting along with us. So jump inside the Quilting Rockstars Facebook group in order to get started with that and purchase your copy of the Aldebran quilt pattern. There's a link in the caption of this video for both of those things. Have I forgotten anything, y'all? Like, share, come quilt with us. Oh, speaking of which, 8:30 p.m. tonight inside the Quilting Rockstars Facebook group. We'll keep going on this beauty. I'm going to make 10 more blocks. You're going to make however many you need to do another quarter of your quilt. We're all making different sizes. That's why I phrase it that way. And I will see you back here next Thursday for talking about 2 color quilts and how to choose fabrics for them. I'm going to have big stacks of my stash out, and we're just going to play and mix and match and talk through that together. All right? Thank you guys so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you tonight in Quilting Rockstars and back here next week. Bye, y'all.